Welcome back, or welcome to the Tiny Shifts podcast. I'm your host, Andy Nunn, and this is episode number 4 of this podcast. Tiny Shifts is about how the mind actually works, not how we wish it worked, sadly. And it's about how small things in thinking can create real change over time. So each episode, my goal is to take one idea from psychology, neuroscience, or philosophy and turn it into something practical. These are tools, it's not just theory for theory's sake, basically. Tools that you can hopefully actually use. And I'm not here to, just offer hype and motivational quotes or quick fixes. The ideas we talk about here are going to take a bit of effort and they're going to challenge how you see things. That's my goal here. And sometimes they'll feel uncomfortable. And I think that's the point, I'm not here to sort of pump you up. I'm here to help you notice and basically help you get out your own way. And today's episode is about an interesting topic. It's something that gets mixed up quite a lot. It's the habit of optimism and being optimistic. Now, some people will hear the word optimistic and they will get a bit frustrated straight away. We all have those people at work who have toxic positivity and things like this, but we're going to define what optimism is and go over those details. So by the end of this episode, we will have one practical tool. This is something I teach on stage that will really help you out. So let's get into it. So I'm going to define optimism as basic as I can. A lot of people think it's seeing the bright side of life, but that's not what I mean here today. Real optimism is the idea that things can improve and you can do something about it. I think that's the key part. Things can improve and you can do something about it. So you have sort of agency over something. It's a little bit different than confidence. So you can be confident without optimism, basically. So optimism would be like, I don't think I'm good at this, but I'm going to do it anyway, sort of. And confidence is like, I can do this, So I want to just talk about again what optimism isn't. So it's not I'll be fine. It's I can handle it. That's a really big difference. I'll be fine sort of passive. It's sort of, there's no control there. Where I'll handle it is all about agency. So here's a good way to sort of spot a fake version of optimism, like I'll be fine. Basically, fake optimism avoids like sort of discomfort in one way or the other. You don't want to be comfortable. You don't want to really tell the truth. You're just like, yep, we'll be fine. That's not optimistic. Basically avoiding discomfort. Real optimism tells the truth and still takes action. So if you've been in work and your boss is saying, all good, we're going to smash it this week, when you're looking around and everyone's like freaking out. I used to work in a lot of contact call centers and everyone would come in on a Monday, you'd have to lie and pump everyone up after half the team have been fired and everyone is stressed and you're telling everyone they're going to smash it. That is just, toxic positivity, really. And it's pressure at the end of the day. And pressure kills that honest communication and honest relationships, authentic relationships that you want in a team. So that's not what we're chasing. We're not chasing positivity. We're chasing better relationships with your team and your own mind and things like this. So why should we look to be optimistic? Well, the stats are pretty good. Like a lot of people think, if someone's optimistic, they might just be unhealthy, they might take too many risks and all that sort of stuff. But the research says otherwise. Optimistic people tend to live better lifestyles. They have better habits. So there was a cohort study where higher optimism was linked to higher chance of being a non-smoker. So you're 17% more likely to have a healthy diet, is 25% more likely, and a healthy BMI, body mass index, which is 18% more likely. And then a couple of other studies that really just show the benefits of this. Optimism links to longevity. So it's obviously because of those behaviors, people with higher optimism will link to lower mortality rates. which sort of makes sense if you've got a better diet, better BMI, and non-smoker. But even in young adults, optimism lines up with more pro-health behavior. And I guess the big thing, there was a large Harvard-led paper reported optimists lived up to 15% longer on average, and they had higher odds of living past 85. That's quite interesting. And I think we would all want to hopefully adopt some of those behaviors. And hopefully today, I'm just going to give you a quick sort of outline of how you can do that, what habits can work really well to improve your optimism. So again, I want to clarify what optimism isn't. It isn't, positivity is like a mood. I'm going to feel good, feel happy, and all that sort of stuff. Optimism is a thinking habit, so it's about agency, thinking you have control, like self-efficacy. So you think things can improve and you can do something about it. That's the key, that you have control of your future outcomes. So I think that's the important thing is it's a thinking thing, and you're able to take control. And I spend a lot of time at the moment talking on stage. My main theme is about the stories that we tell ourselves and how the stories about our identity influence, our future and our decisions, our behaviors and our habits. And what I mean by this is can be like, if you think you're someone who's lazy, or you think you're a pessimist, or you think life is hard, that's the sort of beliefs that you have, or it's probably not identity, it's just a belief that you have in general. But these influence how you see the world and the lens that you have. And unless you challenge these, often they're going to influence all the decisions that you make. So really what I'm trying to promote with this podcast and standing on stage is the idea of metacognition. Now, metacognition, if you look at the word and you break it down, the word meta is Greek for beyond. And then you have cognition, which is thinking. So beyond thinking, essentially, it stands for. And metacognition as a term, the definition is thinking about your thinking. Now, you probably wonder why you would want to do that. Well, if most of our thoughts, 95% of them are automatic. They're just happening. You're just responding to the environment. Now, Daniel Kahneman, he wrote a book, which is an incredible book about how you thinking fast and slow. And he defined a few things, system 1 and system 2 thinking. And system 1 was the automatic thoughts that we have. So for a second, I would just like you to do 2 times 2, 4. That's automatic. That's a system 1. Okay. You're just responding, and you can't really not know the answer, if that makes sense. So if I go, what's 2 times 4? It's very hard not to think 8. You're just responding, and you don't have to actually use your brain. Now, if I said, what is 15 times 62? Now, your brain, that cognitive load that you're feeling, that's a system 2. And we don't tend to use it too much. Okay. So the rest of the time, system 1, that's the reason why a lot of our biases come into play, because we're living in that system 1 sort of thinking way. And because of our cognitive biases, which are shortcuts, they allow us to make really fast decisions, keep us alive. They stop you, walking in front of a car. They stop you making bad relationships with people. They're really good at there's so many of them, the way you look at the world. But they evolved in order to keep us alive, essentially. And they are a feature, but they're also a flaw at the same time, because they cause a lot of problems. And there's over 100 different biases that we all have. And unless we start thinking about our thinking, we're going to just be stuck. We're going to remain fixed. And when I mean fixed, it could be like a fixed mindset. We could say that. So it's not believing that you have the ability to change, or you don't want to change, and you remain stuck. The other term is growth mindset, which is by Carol Dweck, coined the term. And it's the ability that you believe that you can change. And I believe that metacognition is that secret piece to a growth mindset. And being optimistic is also one of those pieces. Now, the statistics are quite interesting. I would often say, because we have negativity bias, but most people have an optimistic bias about their futures. And it's quite interesting. It's about 80% of people, but that doesn't mean most people are optimists. There is some skills that we can learn to do this, but let's get back onto the metacognition. So thinking about your thinking, this is essentially what I'm talking about on stage and I'm going to be talking about on this podcast. And one thing we've found is a habit. It's a thinking tool. It's a life tool. Research shows that metacognition correlates really highly with performance outcomes, so high performance, successful outcomes, around about 30%. But confidence alone, which is just thinking that you're good at something, correlates really poorly. This is self-reported confidence. It correlates like 0 to 5% of successful outcomes are based off of self-reported confidence. So if you want to improve in any area of your life, you want to help your teams, you want to be successful, or you want to build new habits, thinking about how you think and understanding your own biases and understanding how your mind works is one of the most beneficial tools that you can have or do. And it takes a lot of work. I think that's the problem. And a lot of it's uncomfortable, and you have to sort of look at your mind in an interesting way. For instance, we often assume that our version of reality is the way reality is. We assume that in each moment that our view on the world is how everyone is seeing it. And from my own experience, I know that to be completely false. For starters, I found this out when I was colorblind. I didn't know I was colorblind until I was 13. And I just assumed everyone was seeing the world. There was a time when I was 30 where I realized that my version of, or my perspective was so different. And it was when I discovered I had aphantasia. Now, aphantasia is when your mind's eye is completely blind. So think about this. When you close your eyes at night and you imagine something, or you just close your eyes now and you can imagine seeing someone's face and you see the image in your mind. I have never seen anything. My mind's eye is always blind. I don't see anything at all. And I lived about 30 years of my life like this without knowing that it was a thing. And I didn't know. And most people who have aphantasia don't know that they have it. And when I stand up on stage and I talk about this, there's so many people in the audience that aren't aware. And the research says it's about 2% of people. And you think about that, they're walking around not knowing that people are seeing the world completely different than them. And that's perspective. You're in the same moment, the same reality, the same experience, but you've got a completely different perspective. And that's not how we think, though. We just think this is the reality and this is how it is, not this is my perspective. And once we start taking a step back and realizing it's just your perspective, everything else becomes a little bit easier. You can look at your problems, you can look at other people's problems, you can look at arguments a little bit different. You don't have to get caught up in trying to be right, and you can let go a little bit more of what's happening in your reality. Just because you're seeing it in your perspective doesn't mean it's true. And once you start thinking about this and being open to the fact you're not clinging to being right, being certain, and being a bit more curious, you can begin to change over time. And I believe this is a skill and it's a habit, and we have to continually do this and just look at our minds in that way as being quite curious. And I'm going to give you some quick tips on how you can do this. So there's a few ways to sort of boost your optimism. So 4 ways which are proven by research. Number 1 is outlining your best future. So take a notepad and pen and write your best future in 5 to 10 years of how you would like to see your life, what you would imagine. Think about your relationships, your work, your family, your habits. And this is a sort of optimistic mindset. You're putting yourself in a frame of mind. You just have to do that. Take about 20 minutes doing it. Really write into some detail about that. Number 2, this is probably the most popular one that we've all heard about. Some people have done it. And it's gratitude journaling. So what this does, we are pattern seeking creatures. We look for patterns. And if you start seeking for gratitude, and you've got to be quite detailed when you do this, don't just say, I'm grateful for coffee. Say, I'm grateful for X, and then a reason why, and explain its details of how it makes you feel. And you can do this in the journaling, and then you can take it a step further, and like you can do it on walks, you can do it in the moment when you sit down for your dinner and things like this. It enables you to just have a nicer mindset around the world. It encourages you to have that optimistic mindset. And you can look for moments of gratitude, even in difficult times, and it can help through those stressful times. They recommend just doing 2 to 3 every morning, takes a couple of minutes, make it a habit with your coffee, and you'll see some benefits. The next one, your setbacks in a new light. So often when something happens, we look at it from a frame of blame. Often we will say we weren't good enough, or we start looking at our beliefs from how we think who we are and things like this. Can often, we call them a disaster. We say, oh, this is terrible. But an optimistic person will try to think of it as a temporary setback. Okay, well, at least I tried, that I did my best. I'm going to try again. You know, I learned a lot that time. So often I say, what did you learn from this? So, for instance, last year I had 2 big races that I trained for. Ultra Trail Australia 100-mile race, which I was aiming for top 10. I trained all year from it. I was the fittest I ever had been in my entire life. And I got injured a week before. And I had to completely reassess everything. And I had to reassess what success was going to be for me. And my success was 50 kilometers. If I could make it past 50 kilometers, even though that's only a third of the race, I would feel like a success. I probably shouldn't have started, but I trained so much for it. I did it. The first 50K was excellent, and I pulled out at 80 kilometers. And it was quite sad. It was quite frustrating. I was pretty upset, but I quickly used that as an opportunity to learn and grow, and I decided to move on to the next race. And I could still had my fitness, still had my training, and move on. And similar thing happened in Dragonback Ultra. So that was 6-day race, 370 kilometers. And because of the injury that I had sustained in May, I couldn't really train for it. I just got to the starting line, and I decided that my goals in that race had to change. Even though I went in as one of the favorites, which was quite funny, I decided that my goal was going to be just to take each day as it comes. I wasn't going to get injured. If I did get injured, I would pull out immediately. So I actually made it to the final day. And then I had a pain in the right side of my leg, which didn't feel right. I didn't want to run through it because I didn't want to make it worse. I spoke to a medic, and he advised that I pull out. He's not going to pull me out, but he recommended that I do. It could be a bone injury. So I did, with 15 kilometers to go, which no one ever does, 320 kilometers in 5 days. And that was hard, probably the hardest decision I've had to make. But I tried to be optimistic about it and put a setback into a new light. I proved a lot to myself that week. I did a lot of journaling and writing, and I didn't deny that I was upset. I allowed myself to be frustrated and sad and cried and all those sorts of things. And because I put a lot into it, it's a big race. I've always wanted to do it. I made it so close, but I was really proud of what I achieved. And yeah, I can't take that away. That's incredible achievement. I wish I could have crossed the finish line that day. I didn't get to do it, but I'm going to be fit. And the way I looked at it was, I'm going to be able to recover faster and start training again. And there'll be more races. There'll be, again, thinking about the future, taking agency, taking control. And then I start training again and getting fitter again. And sadly, my injuries have been carrying, but I've been able to train a little bit. And yeah, it's been great. The last one, which I'm going to leave you with here, is do something for other people. Now, I'm going to be honest, this is probably something I don't do enough of. But this research shows helping other people pay it forward. And I've been talking to this about with my wife at them recently because we just bought a new house, and the owners were so incredible. They helped us out so much. They left us stuff. They were so kind. They made sure that when we moved in, because my wife is quite heavily pregnant at the minute, when we moved in, the house was just set up perfectly for us. And there was just, yeah, and they just asked us, we don't want anything back from you, but what we ask, if there's somebody in the future who needs help and you can see that, can you please help them? And that's what they said to us. And I just thought that was such a beautiful thing. They were so kind. And yeah, I was just like, we need to do something for people. And I wish that I had that view, and I wish I was doing more of that. So this is something I've made a sort of goal for myself this year, and I'm going to look for opportunities. So I'm trying to see opportunities where I can help people, and whether that's helping people that are going through the same journey as me, or helping people at conferences. I get quite a lot of people come up to me after my talks about ADHD. And yeah, I really want to get on board of trying to help as much as I can without any reward, and just this is the reason I want to do this talk. I want people to walk away being like, okay, well, I'm going through struggles too. I, I've been through addiction, I've been through ADHD, mental health. I have a lot of life experience to get to where I am right now. I've even though some of it was the worst shit ever, I wouldn't take any of it away because it's enabled me to sit here and do this. So I want to do as much as I can. I'm going to look for these opportunities. It's a term like pay it forward. And I think that pay it forward is a mindset, looking for opportunities to help people, which is great. And I think that's something we all need right now. There's a lot going on in the world, and we can become quite focused, and stress often makes us just focus on ourselves, and looking after ourselves is really important. But I think if you're looking at a lens, you're looking at the world, looking for that way to help people, it's a beautiful thing. And I'm going to leave it there. I think that's enough for today. I'm had a busy week. My wife, the baby's going to be due any day, so I'm a bit all over the place, but I promised I'll get the podcast out every Thursday. I hope you guys are enjoying this. Please message me. I'm speaking to a lot of people who are talking to me about, their kids have ADHD, and they've just been diagnosed with ADHD, aphantasia. People tell me about their anxiety. I've had so many people about alcohol as well. And please reach out. I'm happy to chat, happy to tell you, give you any advice, any books. And yeah, thank you so much again for listening. And next week, the next 4 weeks, I'm going to do like a series each 4 weeks. And the next week will be focused again. I'll be focusing on people's perspectives. And we're going to deep dive into metacognition, thinking about thinking, and can just continue this journey of what can we do to improve our relationships with our own thoughts? How can we not become so reactive? How can we be calmer? How can we make better decisions, better habits, so we can show up for ourselves, for our families, for our colleagues? That is my goal. So thank you again, and I wish you all the best.